Pode, cuidado aí atrás para você não bater. Hello, everyone. Welcome to COLATAM LATAM SUMMIT, the first event for Latin flexible spaces industry. Today's Tuesday, June 29, 12 o'clock Central Time. My name is Claudia Raposo, and I'm here today directly from Sharing EC in São Paulo, Brazil, to present you how to develop a community panel in a divided world. Before we continue, allow me to express our gratitude towards our sponsors, because without them, this event would never be possible. Thanks to Piwa, our official event and streaming platform, which is offering us memorable experiences to connect remotely. Thanks to Nexodus, that has been helping to manage operations within co-working communities and flexible workspaces since 2012, being one of the first dedicated and specialized in the segment. Thanks to Corfo, which supports entrepreneurship, innovation, and competitiveness, also strengthening human capital and technological capabilities throughout Chilean territory. And finally, thanks to Cobot, which provides all the necessary tools so that co-working spaces can grow and prosper together with their members. Thanks to all our supporters, Coworkies, Coworking Brazil, and EOS Office, and also to our media partners, All Work, and agency partner, Doppio Design. I'm here today to present you, as I mentioned, the panel, How to Develop a Community in a Divided World. And I'm very proud to have today with us two professionals of the segment for a long time already. Two ladies, Ashley Proctor and Pauline Roussel. First, let me present to you Ashley Proctor. Ashley is Canadian, one of the original voices of the co-working movement. Ashley Proctor has been building collaborative communities since 2003. Worked to develop and launch X Spaces in 2004, Creative Blueprint in 2006, 12, and 15, Foundry in 2011, and 312 Main in 2018. All co-working communities, artist studios, and gathering spaces in Toronto, Vancouver, and Seattle. Ashley is one of the founding members of Coworking Canada, Coworking Toronto, and Coworking Ontario, and has been leading these alliances for the past 10 years. In 2013, Ashley created the COHIP, the first co-working health insurance plan, now available for all independent workers in Canada. Ashley served as the founding executive director of 312 Main, leading her team to repurpose the former Vancouver police headquarters and reestablished the 105,000 square feet community-driven Center for Social and Economic Innovation in the heart of Vancouver downtown East Side. Pauline Roussel, French. Bienvenue, Pauline.
Merci.
French and co-founder and CEO at Coworkies, first global job board for co-working spaces and their members. Co-initiator of Hack Co-working, an annual Future of Work and Workspaces conference and hackathon. Presents the Hot Water Podcast, a podcast show looking at the future of work and workspaces through various angles and with professionals from all over the world. She's also the co-author of Around the World in 250 co-working spaces. She dedicates her time and effort to better understand the world of modern workspaces with the mission to teach people and companies about it and help them attract and retain talent with being one step ahead when it comes to their workspace strategy. Welcome, ladies. Be very welcome to our panel today. So,
thank you.
Thank you for being here today. And if I may, yesterday we had a panel also talking about communities. It was a Spanish one, a Spanish version of the panel. But allow me to start with something. What would you say? What would be the most important thing for us to try and build a community today? If you can go ahead and start, Pauline.
Of course. Thanks for having me first. I'm really happy to be here and really happy to see the COLATAM conference coming to life after so much work. So I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate you guys because I know how much effort it takes to bring such events. So I'm delighted to be here. To answer your question about how to start with communities, I think it's always the most difficult part to start and to kickstart a community. I think one of the first things you need to ask yourself is why do you want to start a community? What's driving you towards wanting to bring those people together? And what can you offer those people also? Or how do you intend also to gather them around your purpose? There are many communities, and not just in the co-working world, of course, that gravitates around very different purposes. People meet because they love cooking. People meet because they love dogs or they love hiking. And I think in the purpose of co-working, people meet, there are different communities gravitating around co-working spaces. There are people like us who are interested in the co-working industry and we want to get to know each other. But you also have a lot of people who just love to gather, to work together and support each other. So I think when you want to start with the community, the two questions that you need to answer yourself is like, why I want to do this? And what kind of community do I want to build also? Physical, online, there are many factors. And I'm sure Ashley has a lot of things to add to that too.
Yes, again, thank you for having both of us here. This is really exciting to get to spend time with Pauline and you all as well today. I would say that the most important elements when first starting a community is to gather around a shared vision or values. There are so many things that we might be trying to achieve in our different communities, and if we can really make sure that we're organizing around the mission, that mandate really carries you through the rest of the work. And I would say another important and essential ingredient or element to community building is community engagement. To really have the community members themselves involved in the process from the earliest moment, whether it's the concept, the early design phase. I think it's really important so that the community members themselves, no matter the size or scale or mandate, feel invested and feel ownership over the project. And so no matter what you're building, you should be building with, like alongside, and not for a community.
So if I understand correctly, what you're saying that we should have a purpose or a shared interest, as you mentioned, Ashley, before when we are doing this, when you're building the community itself. So and when we look at co-working spaces, many of the co-workings, I understand that many are dedicated to a specific area, but many are diverse, very different interests. How do we try to get to understand what is the common idea, what is the shared interest in this place for us to try and build this community?
Well, I guess I'll start with saying in any group of people, whether they're in a co-working community or not, there are shared interests. You just have to look at different levels of commonality. And so even though we may be in different industries in a co-working space, we both want to be productive. And maybe we want to separate our home life from our work life to be a bit more professional sometimes. Or maybe we want to be inspired by other people and to learn new things. And that's why we're in a co-working community. So we might share those values very closely, even if our industries or our day-to-day tasks or roles are very different. And I think in terms of the social impact or the community engaged spaces that I tend to work with and build, the most basic values are really what we gather around, which is, food and clean water and air for all. And we all want to have some sort of agency or autonomy or a sense of independence. We all value taking care of our friends and our family and our close relations. And many of us want to create a business or work for ourselves or remotely because that's how we thrive. We appreciate the social engagement or maybe the impact we're making together. But there are so many things we can gather around that aren't necessarily work specific.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Pauline?
I think to add on what Ashley was saying, if we have people watching us now who are either in the process of starting a co-working space or they're right now struggling or maybe trying to look at how to build or engage more with their communities, I think it's also interesting to look at the type of members you have. Very often, one of the mistakes co-working spaces make is to not, as Ashley was saying, not build the space with their members. So I think it's very important to be close to your community and get to know them, get to know their expectations. So don't just do things for them, but do things with them. I remember when I used to run a co-working space in Berlin, we started it from the ground up. And we really tried a lot of community events because the way you form communities, of course, is, yes, people will come to use your space for work, but the way they connect is not going to be in front of their computers talking on Slack. Maybe yes, but not just that. So as part of the experience, you offer them community events, and then you have to decide as the community manager, head of community, or whichever your title is, okay, what am I going to do for the members? And I think we tried a lot of things without never asking what they wanted. And the attendance was very low because those were things we liked. We liked cooking, we liked yoga, but our community was mainly tech guys who were not very interested in those things. And I think things really started to change when we really had a conversation with each and every member. So with the team I used to run, we said, okay, let's go for a lunch, one-on-one with members and say, hey, what do you expect from this space? Because we didn't want to be just a co-working space, meaning just a space where people come sit, work, and go home. We wanted them to be part of that community. And we thought, okay, we need to understand what they need and what can we bring. And this is how we started to develop content around what they really needed. So content-driven events where there's a topic. Some members, for instance, I remember were super good in SEO and they wanted to teach others about SEO tips and tricks and tactics. But then there were also very playful events like ping pong tournaments that become super successful because everybody was super competitive. And those were very simple things, but then suddenly the attendance rate completely changed. We went from 5 people per event to maybe 25 to 50 people per event because people really enjoyed it and because we listened. So I think when you want to build a community, one of the first thing really is don't do it by yourself. Talk to your members, engage with them as much as you can to understand how you can make a difference in their lives because they're going to spend 8 hours a day in your space. So there's more than just work that they can get from your space.
Perfect, great. I can see that ping pong event being a success. I understand. I can relate to that. Now, let me ask you something. Still, of course, in the same subject. After all these 1.5, 18 months or so of pandemic, we many of us, all of us, we started living in a digital world, everything digital, all the meetings, everything digital related for most of this time and for most of the people. How it is the co-work, the communities in regards to this digital? How do you take this digital event, this community events and all these events that you created in Berlin, and how do you take that to the digital world? How do you do that?
You asking me or Ashley?
You can go ahead, Pauline.
Yeah, okay. I think, yeah, for us, before the pandemic, most of the things we were doing were offline. So as everybody, we really had to adapt. We had quite a lot planned for 2020, events in Japan and other things around our hackathon series. So it was supposed to be a great year. But of course, when the pandemic hit, the same as any co-working spaces, we had to adapt. We didn't want to just stay and be like, oh no, it's not going to happen. We're really sad. Like, what should we do? We said, okay, let's just connect with everyone we know around the world and try to see what they are doing, how are they adapting. So because in the introduction, I forgot to mention that we traveled quite extensively over the last 5 years. We visited over 400 co-working spaces across 48 cities, from Japan to New York. So all those people, we always were meeting them in person. So I think through COVID, we learned how to stay connected to them digitally. So when the pandemic hit, the first 3 months, we spent most of our time talking to them and be like, hey guys, how are you? What's the situation in your country and how can we help? And I think from that, a lot of things came out. So for instance, one of the things we launched is the hackathon that we decided to do online. And what was very unique about this is that we transitioned from being only in Tokyo to actually do it as a global event where we would gather all the people we've met along the way. And for the first time, we also plugged the conference because we thought it was important to give spaces and members of co-working spaces a chance to connect and talk to each other during those hard times, so that, you know, people don't see co-working as a threat. So we really wanted to connect members of spaces and operators so they can build a safe return to co-working spaces. So that's one of the big things we've done. And for us, it really came out to really reaching out to people and be like checking in with everybody. And then the second thing we launched is also a community of community managers group, which is a very passionate project of ours. We realized that for many community managers in co-working spaces, the job became completely different. They went from running a space physically, seeing people every day, being close to them. And, you know, if you need something, you'll be like, hey, man, can I talk to you for a second? To suddenly being in a very different place, only online. And certain community managers are also not people who are very tech friendly. So they don't really know how to handle all those tools, or it's not their thing. So we decided to create this support group during the pandemic, which is still going on, where we have, I think, close to 200 community managers from all over the world. And we do meetups where we share best practices, tips, how to adapt, what to do. And it was really interesting for me because I saw many ideas popping up and people taking them and implementing them in their spaces, like quick morning coffees, show up. Like a lot of ideas got born out of this. So in the end, yes, of course, it was very difficult, and I think above all, super frustrating to not be able to access the physical space. But in retrospective, I also think it brought a lot of new opportunities to co-working spaces. Like I even see now new jobs popping up in co-working spaces due to the pandemic for digital membership management. So there are new doors opening, I think, now because of the pandemic for community management in a different way. And I think this is also super exciting.
Perfect, thank you. Ashley, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I really agree with Pauline. A lot of the work that we did over the pandemic was similarly designed to support operators while they were going through this transition time as well. And it really was about mental health support. It was about collaborating and pooling our resources to be able to, you know, achieve things faster and more efficiently, and to divide some of the tasks. In the earliest days, we were very confused around the new regulations and health restrictions, and where do we get PPE from, personal protective equipment? Where do we get all the supplies that we need to keep our communities safe? And so we really worked collaboratively through our existing collectives and alliances like Coworking Toronto or Coworking Ontario, Coworking Canada, across the country to really, you know, help each other and share our learnings as we're going, because things were changing just so quickly in the earliest days. that community evolved again to support the operators as we were trying to navigate some of the loans or the potential support that came from the government, how to fill out some of the paperwork, how to best use those resources in our communities, how to pool some of those resources to take care of some of the initiatives that we're all working on collaboratively. And then we held some unconferences as well at different levels so that we could bring together all of the operators so that they could just really get to know each other and rely on each other, as Pauline mentioned, how important it is just to have that community of peers. It's a collaborative mindset that we want to echo not only in our spaces, but through our operators as well and through the entire co-working movement. I think that's something that really makes our industry different to begin with, is that when we're in trouble or when we want to learn how to do something new, or if we're trying to push the bar to break down barriers or build bridges, we work together to do it. And in this case, I really saw that happening across Canada and around the world collaboratively.
That's so nice to hear. I'm glad you felt. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may just add on what Ashley was saying, I think it's also a matter of mindset. Because for many co-working spaces, the adaptation of like, okay, I understand right now it's my space is limited, but how can I be creative and build creative solutions for my community to thrive, but then to open up new opportunities. Like we saw co-working spaces, for instance, in Japan, who got completely new business opportunities and business lines out of the pandemic because of online communities. Suddenly, people who could not access, let's say someone who was living in northern Japan, cannot go to Tokyo every day, of course, take a 3-hour flight to go to a co-working space is a little bit too much. So what they did is like they extended their community membership online so that anyone from anywhere in the world can become part of their community. So I think it's also a matter of mindset for co-working spaces watching us now and being like, oh, I'm really struggling to rebuild my community in the physical space. Well, why don't you just try maybe digitally? Are there things you can do in your city, in your region, to build things digitally for the time being until vaccination rolls out faster and until a co-working space come back to their new normal? Are there things you can explore in more creative way and in other format than just with your physical space?
I think it's important to really highlight what you just said there about the accessibility. It's key, really. We've changed this through our event programming, and now that we're working in this digital way, we can have attendees from all over the world participating in an event such as this. We can do it in a way that's affordable. We can afford to donate some of these proceeds to organizations. And really make a difference in that way. And I think that's something that we'd like to carry forward as Co-working Canada or any of the other event organizations that I work with. We don't want to go back to an in-person only exclusive event. We really want to make sure that this information can be shared widely, that we can reach as many operators as possible to collaborate, to help each other. And share that information. And although we really miss gathering in person, I'm thinking in the future that that will also be secondary to making sure the information gets as far and wide as possible in this new accessible format.
It's 2 points, right? One is, of course, the information will get a lot, but it's going to be spread with the digital world. But of course, we miss so much getting to see people in person and sitting for a coffee together with someone. So you see, you're having your coffee there. I'd like to have it. We could share it next time, maybe all the three of us together, of course, and sending the information to the whole world. That's nice. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Claudia, can I just add one last thing on that? Sorry, it's because I found the question really interesting. So one of the things I also want to say is that by having or looking more into digital memberships for your co-working space, you should not forget that you also will open doors to people who cannot necessarily afford a full co-working membership. For a lot of people, and I'm thinking, for instance, about students, there were a lot of initiatives launched by co-working spaces in France, for instance, during the pandemic to support students. And the membership, students connect to companies in the co-working space, but also find a community with whom they can, learn and get supported. So I think by really looking into digital co-working, or virtual co-working or new memberships, digital memberships for your space, you can really open the doors to people and communities who don't necessarily have the means, financial means to join our community, but they can bring a lot to it.
That's a great idea. It's great. We'll be adding more people to our community, people that eventually would not be able to participate. That's great, Pauline. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. What about, if I can just go on to the next subject that we have here, can you tell us, Ashley and Pauline, a little bit of the creative blueprint and Coworkies to our audience, to people that are listening to us or seeing us? Can you tell us a little bit of the two companies? Ashley, if you want to start.
Sure, yeah. You did a great recap at the beginning. The Creative Blueprint's been around for about 18 years now, and we've been inspiring this global network of catalysts and change makers, and we work in partnership with these people, which are typically neighborhood community residents, community organizers, different kinds of unions, or co-working leaders. And we're working together with different partners like the government and local community groups to help shape the new work landscape. So we do projects such as the Center for Social and Economic Innovation that you mentioned in Vancouver, BC, or what's colonially known as Vancouver, BC. That project was particularly important to me as it was a redevelopment project of the former police headquarters, and we changed that space based on community demand into a community center, which supported and continues to support the local Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Indigenous nations, as that property actually exists on unceded Indigenous territory. The projects that we work on are really meant to help these organizations and enterprises thrive, and we really want to help them achieve their vision, but most importantly, meaningful social impact by engaging authentically with the community. So we start all of our projects on the ground with the community and encourage the organizations that we're working alongside to work with those members and really build out this new vision for a new economy and the future of work that we want to see. And a lot of our work right now is around making sure that the groups we work with are committed to the principles of a just recovery. And I'd like to speak more about that later, but really that's hundreds of organizations across Canada have decided that the status quo should be disrupted. And we're standing on this threshold between the old world and the new, and we get to choose the future we want. So there's a lot of change in Canada happening in that vein, and I can talk more about that later. But that's generally the folks we're working with.
Thank you. Pauline, what about Coworkies?
I think you described it as a job board, but I think for us, Coworkies is more like a journey. We started in Berlin. As I said earlier, I used to run a co-working space. Dimitar was my partner, was a member inside that co-working space. So yeah, we are two people that fell in love in a way with co-working and with its values and what the positive impact it can have on people, because we've witnessed it every day for 2-3 years. And from then on, I think we've been working really hard in creating something new and unique for co-working spaces around the world. First, by traveling ourselves to see all over the globe, and can we bring to everyone, what can we do to the conversation by being, globally connected. So the way we do that, it kind of like gave us the mission to strive for making co-working better. By bringing more diversity to it, by teaching people about it, so that more and more and more people from all walks of lives, and not just startup and freelancers, as very often I hear, can come and join co-working spaces. And so, yeah, the way we do that is by having the job board, which is a platform where people can learn about jobs in co-working spaces. We educate them about the new jobs that are rising, community manager, event manager. How is it different from an event manager in a normal company, for instance? We also have the hackathon called Hack Co-working, where we like to say it's a member-driven innovation event. So we give members the chance to make co-working better, because it every day to give back in making the co-working experience better. We also have the podcast that you mentioned, and very soon, in a few weeks from now, our coffee table book, so a real physical book featuring 250 co-working spaces from around the world will come out, sharing the stories of people who have dedicated a big chunk of their lives into building creative and collaborative and community-driven work environments around the world. And I think what's important also is that for us, everyone is co-workies. It's not just Dimitar and myself, because we do it with and for the people who work in co-working spaces, for co-working spaces, or who just gravitate around co-working spaces. So we also love to teach companies and tell them about co-working and how good it can be for themselves, for their employees, for their companies. We share the co-working world and am I still connected or?
I'm back hearing you now. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me thank you very much, Pauline. I think we well, I heard everything, I guess. Ashley, was it okay? Did you hear her? Good. So let me ask something in the same path here. When Ashley, you were talking about the new having to choose about the new I don't remember specifically the word you said, but the new world and the old version, the new version of how Canada is looking, deciding if you're going to go through the new world and to the old world. I don't remember the exact words, but we are living in a world of dualities, right? We are living in a world that everything is really pro something or con something. So I'm pro LGBTQIA rights. I'm against it. I'm pro free speech and saying whatever I think. I'm against saying that I don't like a certain type of people. So the world is really living two dualities here. How do you feel we can build communities and still integrate these two groups of people?
Yeah, I think in most co-working communities, we're trying to be inclusive. So we really want to make sure that we are hearing from a lot of different kinds of people who have different backgrounds and levels of experiences, different ages. And everyone brings with them, experience and their own opinions. And like you said, their own values. I don't think that there is a lot of room I work both in the USA and in Canada, and there isn't a lot of room for collaboration between some of those groups who happen to be on the extreme. But again, when we really shift it down to the most essential things that we learned over the pandemic, which is we need to shift to a more collaborative mindset. We need to work as a community to take care of each other. We need to provide mutual aid because the government isn't necessarily going to be able to take care of all of us in a global crisis, such as this pandemic or the economic crisis that we see following in many places. So we decided to start working together at a co-working level and on a national level as well, in terms of things like COHIP, like community land trusts. We've been working to secure land so that through this process, we don't lose a lot of those things. And these are things that we all need regardless of, how we might vote politically. One of the things I really wanted to highlight is this. The organizations aren't necessarily working together in their day-to-day work, but these are all different kinds of social impact groups, nonprofit organizations, enterprises that are designed for profit, environmental groups, co-working spaces. Everyone's agreed that we're preparing to rebuild. And this is an opportunity that we have to say, we refuse to go back to the way that things were. We've witnessed years of underinvestment and inaction, and we have watched colonialism and human rights abuses and social inequity and ecological degradation and police brutality and systemic racism and gender inequality, even a cultural indigenous genocide here in Canada. And this isn't the way we want to live and work. And so this pandemic has really given all of us who are community leaders, community builders, community organizers, an opportunity to say, no, the status quo must be disrupted and we want to do something different. And so even though we all have very different mandates, there are 6 principles we could agree on together. And so maybe these are the principles folks could organize around in spaces where they may be very divided. One is to put people's health and well-being first. You can do this in any workspace or organization, and it's going to be a benefit. To strengthen the social safety net and provide relief directly to people. So if people are in need, making sure that people directly get the support they need without involving lots of middle folks who are siphoning potentially that aid. To prioritize the needs of workers and communities, so really elevate that out. The human needs come first and foremost. It's not about a corporate need or a development interest. One of the principles is to build resilience into our organizations to prevent future crises. So we can gather around that. We want to have a stronger community so that when we're faced with something as precarious as this situation in the future, that we will rebound and we will be resilient. And to build solidarity across and equity across communities and generations and borders, because we believe that everybody deserves these basic human rights. And so this really informs a lot of the work that we're doing in a national sense, collaborating across industry, across co-working spaces. And in an effort through this economic redevelopment, we also have an opportunity to say that we don't want the co-working industry to be the way that it has been. And so Creative Blueprint and myself have really spearheaded one of the initiatives that the co-working industry is working on right now, which is the Co-working Idea Project. And that commitment is to make the co-working industry more inclusive, more diverse, more equitable, and accessible. And we think that because we all have communities and platforms, we can do this collectively if we take small steps over time. And so we've launched challenges every month to the co-working industry to really step up and make the changes that they say they want to see, or to be the change they want to see in the future.
That's great. I like that. Thank you very much, Ashley. What about you, Pauline? Anything to add on that?
Yeah, first I would really like to thank you guys for bringing up such a question, because I believe it's very important for people to talk about it. If we don't talk about it, none of these issues will be resolved. And I think for many co-working spaces, those are extremely sensitive issues, and sometimes it can feel very overwhelming to have to manage it when you don't know how to manage it. So I think if we have co-working spaces watching us now and feeling they are in this situation and they don't really know how to handle such case, I would say that there are first many initiatives like Ashley just mentioned, the Co-working Idea Project, where you can learn. Also, I believe it's also about conversations. I think it's very important to not hide behind the problem or hide behind the topic if you find it sensitive, but actually find ways to talk about it very calmly with the people that are concerned. Because in many ways we see ourselves co-workers as inclusive. So we value everyone. For instance, when we did Hack Co-working, we paid very close attention to the panel and the number of women that were on stage, because we wanted, and people of colors, because we wanted diversity to be shown, and we really wanted not just men to be on stage, but really to give a chance to everyone to share their stories. But that went with conversations and with getting to know people's stories and listening. So I think for co-working spaces who find themselves in those situations, being an active listeners with your community, understand and see how you can collective solutions. So if your member thinks you're not enough inclusive, how can you work towards that? If you have issues because some people are pro-vaccines and anti-vaccines, same way, how can you have a peaceful conversation? Maybe have a moderator also to moderate the conversation. Surround yourself with people who know how to handle those topics. So you can manage it within your community without deteriorating or degrading the community feeling. But actually, I think people would value it because they feel you listen to them and you feel you appreciate their opinions. So again, you become more inclusive towards your members. I think more open conversations on those topics are really needed to be able to educate people and listen to everyone and make everyone feel listened as well.
For some people,
Go ahead.
Sorry. For some people, the only safe space they may have to be challenged or to have those conversations would be through their co-working community, because maybe they're not having those conversations with their family or in their typical social circles. Maybe they're not being exposed to people from different backgrounds and cultures because of the neighborhood they live in or because of the friends that they currently have. And if you're interested in expanding your circle and learning more about other people and learning more about other people's values and opinions, Pauline's absolutely right. You need to be having these open conversations and very intentionally breaking down, the prohibitive barriers to having them, which is simply discomfort. And the more uncomfortable we are, the faster we're going to get through this point from the painful truth of our past and current systems into some form of reconciliation.
I think in general, when it comes to all those topics, it's also important for your members to know that through your co-working space, they can find a platform where this can be discussed openly, without judgment, without fear. And again, if you don't feel comfortable watching this, you're like, yeah, but I'm not a good moderator. So this shouldn't be a block or an excuse to not do it. And one of the things I also want to say for people who want to learn more about those topics is that there are many co-working spaces who focus on those communities specifically, not the anti-vaccines and pro-vaccines, but I'm thinking more like co-working specifically targeted at women or at LGBTQ or people of color. So one of the things I would also advise co-working spaces interested in those topics and learning how they can handle it is maybe to find co-working spaces who specialize in those communities and learn from them how to do it. People are generally very open. We have quite a few stories like this in our book on how they started and how they did it and how they learned. So I'm pretty sure that if you reach out to those spaces, they would be very happy. First, that you're interested in the topic and that you want to bring it to your community. And I'm sure they would be potentially giving you a lot of tips on how to handle those situations as well. So one of my advice would also be don't be shy and shy if you feel it's too difficult for you to handle balance.
Pauline, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Did you hear me?
Good. I did. I just
okay,
wanted at some point, at least me, I got it stuck, but everything is okay now. So let me. Both of you mentioned that we have to address it, right? It's a tough topic, but we have to address it. We have to deal with it. We're going to be having a panel. If I'm not mistaken, it is on Thursday about diversity. So I suggest that anyone that really likes to talk about this topic will watch this panel. It's going to be, if I'm not mistaken, it is on Thursday, because it is something that we really have to talk about, diversity, and talking about it and having different opinions. But reaching the subject is really important. And of course, both of you said the same thing. We have to listen to people. We have to hear what they say, attentively listen to them, so we can maybe find a middle ground, and something that we can find the middle ground, or at least understand what people are thinking, so we can go further, lead further.
Exactly.
Now, I do have a question from the audience, if I may. What is the biggest challenge that you've had in your careers? Ashley? Oh, Pauline, whoever wants to start.
No, I just find the question very interesting. I don't know if Ashley, you want to go first or?
Sure. I would say I'll relate it back to community building, and really the biggest challenge in community building, and community building is my career. So I would suggest that the biggest challenge really is being brought in after someone has tried to push through an idea on the community and they're facing pushback. And that happens in a lot of situations. Generally, I'm brought in when there's a partnership between the city and a few nonprofit organizations who are trying to serve a group of people who weren't invited to the table for the design process. And then really, instead of just going out and starting from scratch and creating a community that can participate in the process very authentically, my role typically becomes to go and apologize for the work that has been exclusionary in the past, that hasn't been accessible or inclusive. And so my best advice really to others who are building communities is to avoid that whole mess and a lot of money and time and pushback in the first place, and really dive deep with those members that you're trying to serve, whether it be an advisory board, whether it be meaningful and ongoing consultation. This isn't a one-time thing. If you really want to build community, you're checking in with your community all the time. And the big challenge really is when people skip those essential steps and then call me for help.
That's great. Thank you. Pauline?
I think for me, the biggest challenge in my life is really to find what I really wanted to do. I was brought up in a French culture where you have a path to follow and you have to aim for a certain type of career, be it a doctor, a lawyer, a corporate career, whatever you want. And of course, you know, you follow it because you're young, you don't know what to do. So like everybody else, I followed it and I started the corporate career. But somehow I never felt it was the right thing for me. I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel, I don't know, this. And the answer came later, that there was something missing. And I think what was missing for me was that community feeling at work. I felt work was very blunt, was very not uninteresting, but there was not much going on. People were just doing what they were told, and that was it. So I was feeling a little bit like in a cage. And I think for me, the biggest challenge was to ask myself, what do you really want? Like, do you really want to spend the next 40 years of your life doing this, or is there something else? And it took a I'm moving out of Paris, moving to Berlin, completely changing my career. And this is how I came across coworking. And I think for me, it has been a big reveal. I really found myself there, being surrounded by amazing people who inspired me in so many ways. A lot of the members I was with remain my friends to this day. I think it's very special, and this also reflects in the job board we've built, because with the job board, we really want to help people find a job they will really love, and we want to stop having this, oh, I don't want it to be Monday sucks. We really want people to be happy to go to work, and I think co-working spaces have this magical power, and they can really ignite a little spark in you that makes you happy to experience something new at work. And I think this challenge of what I experienced in my career, I put it into the job board that we are building also.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to hear both of you, because you inspire us when you talk about communities and you talk about what you do. It's really inspiring. So I have a question, another question. For both of you, do you think that technology helps to create a community like app, or the old school is the best way?
That's an interesting question. I think we live in a world where technology is part of our daily life. So doing it the old way, of course, I mean the old school way, it can work for sure. But then when you encounter a pandemic, like we just encountered, then what do? You know, you need technology somehow. And I think if you run a co-working space, there are various degrees on how much you want to integrate technology. Claudia, you mentioned earlier tools like Nextudus or Cobot that are co-working management software who can help you somehow with the experience you want to provide to your members. Who don't have many ways and many free technologies. I'm thinking, for instance, about Slack, where you can have or Discord, where you can have your community keep on talking, even a WhatsApp group. So I think it depends on you also, your relationship to technology. If you're not very tech friendly, maybe it can become overwhelming. So I believe it's important to first understand what you want from technology, and then if you are tech friendly, talk to your community again to understand how much technology they want in their experience, because certain people will not like to subscribe to many different platforms. So it's also important to look at technology like what can it do for your members in a simple way. So don't try to overcomplicate things with technology.
That's great. It sounds great to me because I'm not that tech savvy, so too much is too much for me. Ashley? I think
I Ashley anymore in the panel. Maybe she experienced. Yeah.
I don't think we
lost her.
See Ashley anymore. Maybe we can continue the two of us. Let's see what's going on here.
I just wanted to.
People.
Yeah, I just wanted to add though on the technology, because again, when we traveled around the world, we've seen many different co-working spaces using technologies for many different things. So I gave the example of Cobot now for managing, but you also have how do people enter your space? Do you give them a key, a card, an app? So it's really on you. I think when you think about your co-working space and you want to understand how much technology you want to add inside the space, I would really advise you to maybe draw a plan of like, what do you have right now? How much technology do you have? And if you don't have technology, what kind of technology? This is a big thing also, can help you save time, because don't forget that some of those tools are actually really helping you save time for your operations, and you can then spend more time managing your community and building your community. So I think technology somehow is still very important to consider.
It is. It's interesting to see that during the pandemic, I'm from the hotel industry, Pauline. So during the pandemic, it was years of years of work happened in maybe 6-10 months. Something that people were developing for so long, and many of the hotel chains developed and delivered to the customers in maybe 6 months because it was needed to. And it's interesting to see, as you mentioned, many people love to use the technology, and many other customers, they really like to do their old-fashioned way. Technology is not that helpful for them, so we have to manage and of course understand. We're talking about the hotel that don't have have many clients, but all different types of customers. In a co-working, maybe you can try to better understand your customers and your co-workers and deliver as much technology as it fits for them, right? What about, Ashley, welcome back to us.
Exactly.
Hi, sorry about that. We've had a record-setting heat wave here in the Pacific Northwest, and the power just went out for a moment. So back online. Glad to be here. Everything's okay.
So we're talking about technology.
Yeah, and because I didn't hear what Pauline said, I'm sorry if I'm being a bit repetitive, but I have found in my communities that a combination of in-person and using the technology to bolster that or support that connection is really important. And also for someone like me who is fully remote and moving around from space to space, I love being part of virtual communities while I can't be in the physical space itself or in the city itself. And so I've been a member at a few spaces for a number of years. And though we had to go fully virtual over the pandemic, I'm looking forward to seeing them again when they regather. But I still feel like I'm completely in touch with the community through our Slack channels and our conversations, our lunch and learns, our coffees, our meetings, our happy hours online. And once it's safe, we start doing meetups again, like walking in the park or doing an outdoor picnic. And one of the things that's kind of interesting, I'll give you an example right here. I received this in the mail from my co-working space, Office Nomads, and it's got some art and a little calendar reminder of all the events, that are coming up this month. So I can keep this physical thing on my fridge or by me to remind me when to connect online. And then once I get there, everyone from the community is there to celebrate and share with me. So I really love the hybrid form that we're finding now. And I think that moving forward, we're going to continue doing a bit of both. Although I also have been stating for years, like nothing can beat the in-person connections and the serendipity and the bonding and the really important, I think, sharing that comes from working together. But you can recreate some of that digitally. So I'd love to see everyone again at an event, but I also want to make sure that folks can join us from all over the world.
I'd hope so soon. I think we're getting for our last minutes here. Let me ask both of you, would you like to add something in the end? Is there any message that I'd like to leave with us? Pauline, if you want to start?
Yes, I think for me, for anyone watching this right now and finding community building to be hard, it is hard. So let's not lie to ourselves. We are humans, after all. We are people driven by emotions. We are robots. So building a community is extremely hard because you deal with many emotions, many personalities, many opinions. Don't get discouraged, because I think the secret sauce, if there is a secret sauce, because it's not always the case, but one of the things that really make a community work is consistency and persistency. So don't give up, keep on going, keep on building, take some of the learnings we've shared today with you, like build it with them and not just for them. So talk to your members, find ways to engage them, monthly surveys. There's so many things you can launch to get their feedback and perspective on what they really want from your space. But don't give up, like keep going and keep on adding value, keep on positively impacting your members. Because sometimes also because you don't talk enough to them, you don't understand how much value you bring to their life, but actually you do. You very much do. So yeah, I would just encourage anybody watching this now to keep on going and doing it more with your members.
Thank you very much. Ashley?
Yeah, I agree with everything Pauline just said, and that was a really great summary, I think, of how I feel as well. And I would just really highlight that, that role, as you mentioned, really is tough as a community organizer or a leader because you are doing the caregiving. You're the one holding the space, and that's a very underappreciated and essential role in our work. And I hope that folks who are doing that role, that caregiving role, on so many different levels will be recognized and compensated for the work that they do because of how essential it is, the mental health support that they provide. And I also just wanted to mention that the communities that are really doing the best and that are the most resilient are the ones that are the most inclusive and diverse and equitable and accessible. And that's really why we're trying to help all kinds of co-working communities, no matter what their focus or niche in the market is, to become that way so that we can all thrive.
I like that. Thank you very much, Ashley. So ladies, I think we're coming to the end of our panel. I think that people watching us enjoyed spending time with Ashley and Pauline. I know I did enjoy spending time with them. It's great to hear from them. Great professionals of a long time dealing with communities. So ladies, thank you very much for your time. It was very nice host both of you here. I know that there are a lot of people who are watching us, so thank you very much for your time. Watching us here as well. We will follow with our next event, which is the Mujeres Líderes. It would be great to have both of you there as well. It could be also panelists and that event as well. So maybe next time you can do one in English as well, not only Spanish and Portuguese. Thank you very much, ladies. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Merci
Bye
beaucoup,
everyone.
Pauline.
Merci,
bye bye.
à bientôt. Au revoir.
À bientôt.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.